communication is everything also. I said first touch is everything, and now I'm saying communication is everything. And this is, I feel so much about what's been so powerful with my learning over the last couple of years in Vermont is that I've had the opportunity to work really closely with some speech language pathologists and, to really have dialogue and conversation about what we know from our world of deaf-blindness and what they know from their world of, language development, and how can we have a dialogue together to really build powerful early learning around communication for kids with combined vision and hearing loss. And that's, I feel like my mind's been expanded and they've learned a lot. And so that conversation, I think, is an important one to have. So here are just some things to think about when starting an interaction with kids. You always want to let them know that you're there. Like we've talked about, they may not be able to see you coming, or they may not be able to hear you coming. And so having a moment to just let them know, hey, I'm here I am, this is me, having a way to share that information, and then to really fill them in on what's going to happen next. You can use touch cues like we've talked about before. You can have objects that really help them to understand their schedule. We're going to get up and we're going to put in your feeding tube, and giving them the opportunity to feel that object and really to have that information about what's going to happen. A sort of way to think about it is when you approach them, you can come up to them, right? Let them know, tap them somewhere on their arm or their leg to say, hey, it's me, I'm here. Give them an opportunity to kind of think about that. Give some wait time, pause, let them sort of show you with their body that they're ready to interact with you. You can either have an identifier, like a bracelet you always wear, if you have a beard, and give them the opportunity to know who you are. And then again, pause and wait, and see that they'll show you that they're ready to engage in an interaction. When you move into an activity, always give choices. Kid empowerment is so powerful. And when we think about, the number of times throughout the day when kids don't have choices, it's time to go, it's time to eat, it's time to do all of these things. How can we provide that sort of groundwork for self-determination that they'll be using later to teach them at a really young age that their voices are powerful? Let them know that this is what's going to happen. You can use a tactile symbol. You can use a tactile cue like we just talked about with an object. And then let them know when the activity is finished. This is, again, if you just walk away, they may think that you're still there. And so how can you let them know that you're leaving? How can you give them that information? Kids with combined vision and hearing loss are almost always, I don't want to say always, because there may be that one tiny 0.001% of kids who aren't multimodal communicators, but I haven't met one yet. They're all multimodal communicators, and they use their bodies, they may use objects, they may use signs, they may use their calendars, they may use their voices to just learn about their world and to share information with us. And they all have voices to share, and so giving that wait time to let them tell us what they're thinking with their bodies is really a powerful thing to think about. And we move so fast, our world moves so fast, and wait time, I think, often is something that feels so uncomfortable. I always tell myself, Emma, wait until you're almost uncomfortable, because that's probably as long as this kid needs, and it's true. Then maybe they'll turn their body towards you or reach out, but that movement, that slow movement, is really important to remember. So when thinking about communication, kids who are deafblind miss the opportunities to observe the communication of others. You have infants and toddlers who have vision and hearing, and they'll see, us talking to each other. They'll see us greeting each other, saying goodbye, having conversations. They'll really start to learn those social pieces and the language around what it means to communicate. And then they also often miss participating themselves, maybe because there isn't that wait time, or because the communication mode isn't recognized for them, that their voice isn't always a part of the communication. And then also, part of their communication attempts might be missed. It may be just as slight as a change in their respiration and their breathing. If you're not moving slow and you're not listening, you might miss that. Or it might be misunderstood. We might think that by, turning away, they're saying, I don't want that. But what they may be telling us is that they're tired. So there's just a lot of room for misunderstanding with kids. So some things to think about. They'll use, like I said, they'll use multiple modes of communication, and sometimes, or oftentimes, their expressive modes and their receptive modes may be different. And I think about that a lot with kids who have really significant motor needs, who may not be able to be signers, but they may have enough residual vision, or they may be able to place their hands on top of yours to receive tactile sign language, to be receptively really learning a lot of information by sign, but they may not be able to then be able to produce that expressively. So really thinking about what are the shared modes of communication that I can use to both provide sort of the groundwork for expressive communication, and then how can I also be sure that they're getting information from me in a way that's accessible to them as well. And they'll also use all kinds of senses to gain information about their environment. They're going to be using their sense of smell, their sense of taste, their sense of touch. We had a little one who would come right up to things, and you would hold the object and he would smell it, kind of stick his tongue out, and at first people thought it was a behavior. Why is he licking everything that comes into his path? Why? And as we started to explore what does it mean to be deaf-blind, it became very clear to everybody that this was how he was learning about what it was that was in his world. So it wasn't, like Megan said, it wasn't a behavior that he was licking, it was his way to experience and learn. And that's just how it is. So going back to what I was talking about with shared modes of communication, I think a question to think about is how, and I actually wrote it down while I was reflecting on this so that I could be sure to say it in a way that was communicating what I was feeling, but how can we thoughtfully expose kids to these shared modes of communication that are accessible to them, to really give them the opportunity to grow their language and to build the groundwork? Because if we're having these high expectations that Carol talked about at the beginning, that we don't know what their cognitive capabilities are. We don't know what their language capabilities are when they're so little. So how can we be sure to be exposing them to a really broad, wide range of communication functions and modes, and make that least dangerous assumption that they will be competent communicators in so many modes? I just think that's just an important thing. It's not just about making choices. It's about commenting. It's about telling us about their world. It's about projecting. It's about social interactions. So how can we really be sure that we're laying that groundwork? Things to think about is that the mode has to be accessible to the child. So if you're speaking to them, but they have a severe to profound hearing loss and don't wear their hearing aids, that's not accessible. How can we model communication using shared modes? So whether that's through touch and allowing them to feel us using sign language to another communication partner. Oh, right, people have conversations between each other. Oh, that's really powerful. That's really important. And then how can we provide for really incidental learning through access? How can we let kids just understand how we talk to each other throughout the day, like I was saying around sign language, but also if a child has a lot of residual hearing and is using a voice output device, either on an iPad or on a switch, how can we be sure that that is also observed? A language is something that not just a child uses, but that we all use to model. And so how can we be sure to be using it throughout the day so that they can have that experience also?